Josh, okay, right now you're the head of design over at Credit Karma. How many years did it take for you to get to that level?
Design director is probably a little
Design
bit more.
director.
Head of design makes it sounds like I'm running the entire show or something. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 to 12 years, something like that, depending on how you measure. I don't know that it's necessarily about exact like years or time as much as kind of getting yourself in the right position, getting good experience, and kind of working with people and kind of getting to see projects evolve and products kind of grow from different stages and kind of get the experience to understand how what different companies are looking for, what different teams need, and that type of thing.
And how many large companies have you worked for versus small startups?
I love small startups. I spent time at Evernote. I was there about 4 years. Then I kind of left and I did some contract stuff and I kind of bounced around for a few years. It was really fun. And for me, it was something I really needed to do. I worked with some bigger companies like Airbnb and a little bit of time with ClassPass and some of the VC firms like General Catalyst and things like that. And also a ton of really small, tiny companies that were launching their first product. So like literally like they come and say, hey, we have an idea. Or so we have a bit of technology, and literally that's all we have. We have a machine translation system. We need to build a product. I love that. So I love kind of super early stuff where they literally don't know what they need, what the market needs, what is going to make for a good business, anything like that. So yeah. I love some of the super early things. Some of the bigger companies are really fun too. But
when you started at Evernote, I believe it was it 2011?
It was 2011, yeah.
Yeah, I did my research.
Hey,
okay.
You know better than I do.
Okay. In 2011, when you started at Evernote, was it a small company? And
yeah, so at that point, like 2011, Evernote was something like 80 people. I think I was like in the 70s. 80.
80, okay.
Yeah, I was in the 70s somewhere, I think, so right around there. About 12 million users or so. So it was relatively established. And then over the 4 years that I was there, it grew from, I was designer number, I came in right as somebody else came in, so I was designer number 3. And then we kind of grew to about 30 or so, and about 150-ish million users by the time I left. So yeah, everything was kind of 10x in a couple of years, which was really fun. So to see a company, your company grows a ton and your roles change a ton. Like at the beginning, it was really like hands-on, like making stuff and actually just like shipping stuff and working in with code and like actually writing HTML and stuff with some of the developers to later kind of running more of teams and helping other people do things while still being a bit hands-on.
So initially, your role was to be a designer. Were you upgraded to a manager, or how did that work? Because you started off with the small team of 3 people. When you left, how many people were on the design team?
It was about 30.
Wow.
And so it was about 15 or so on the product side and another like 10 to 15 on the marketing side. I think like honestly, I think there's I'm a little confused and I'm still exploring these days on like exact trajectory that we can go on. And so I think there's a bit of I'm going to call it a myth where it's kind of like, hey, I think the way you described it is how a lot of people I think about it. And from you're an individual contributor doing some stuff and then you kind of get upgraded to a manager. And I think that there's some validity in that. I think that's that's definitely the career path for a lot of people. I definitely started managing more people. I think even today, I tend to not think of myself as a manager, even as I'm managing teams of people, as much as a designer still. And I tried it, and maybe that's like just an identity crisis I'm going through.
But however, like all designers, we have a certain stage in our career where you become, where you choose to go forward and become a leader, and you start to teach, and that's why we do like mentoring at our events. And give talks and things like that to grow. But not all designers become managers. Some of them go in the principal route where they actually can work at like lead design teams, but they don't have to do the management kind of part. What is your role in comparison with would you consider yourself like a principal designer?
This is like a psychology session.
It
This
is.
good.
Absolutely. You're getting to know yourself.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I like being really close to the product. So I think that's a little bit more like what people would call an individual contributor. That said, I think I've kind of in the last few years really realized that there's only so much I can do by myself. And as I've worked with really great people, I realized that I can only do what I can do. And if I really want to ship world-class, like best-in-class products, like I'm gonna have to work with other people. And so in order to do that, you like management's almost a necessary evil. But as I've done it more and more and more, I really, really enjoy it. So that's kind of been a bit of my progression. I love people. I love kind of the mentorship side of things. There's another side of things which is really kind of around like there's a great management people, and they're just really, really good at management. And I'm not one of those people. I think I try to take it more from a mentorship type approach, and hopefully be helpful and kind of be there to answer whatever questions. My management style is a little bit more like, hey, here's the really hard project, you're on your own.
But if they don't do a good job, how do you guide them? Or do you just be like, let you go take it to management, sorry, you're fired? No.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's a lot of guidance in there. So I mean, guidance is really important, but I think people learn by doing. And so just get in, kind of start working, start doing stuff, and then I'll be there to kind of help however I can.
Awesome. Okay, so also we'll talk about your side projects while you're working at, just how to balance, because I know a lot of us, well, not, myself, I work at Cascade full-time, and that is my job. But when I was working full-time, I would work on little side projects, and I always wanted something like to keep me stimulated or creating stuff. How do you find the time to balance side projects? Do you have a side project right now?
I do. I have a few. I think like this is actually I think even going back to like how to think about like IC work versus management work. It really like you have to know yourself. Like you have to know like where you get the most value. And for me, I've recently kind of realized that I'm a type of person that always likes new things. And I like doing like a new challenge, a new project, something like that. The downside of that is something I'm not super great at is like the follow through of like the real, like there is legitimate like work that happens from like getting the first idea out towards like actually finishing and shipping and nailing down all the corners and like getting everything just right. And I'm not that strong there, so I have to lean on other people for that. So side projects are funny for me because like I have to pull in other people in order to get them done. Like there's other people that I think are a lot better at shipping stuff and just like they're like get it done, finished, and out the door. I have a bit of a problem with that, so I kind of always am leaning on people that are better at that. Even stuff like we do a lot of like projects around our house, and like I love like interior design, and my wife does too. We do like a ton of stuff around the house, and I'm always kind of like, hey, here's kind of my idea, and if it's gonna get done, you're gonna have to help. Or the opposite.
So you're kind of an art director, and I know you went to you got a master's degree in art direction, right, in Barcelona?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's kind of a common thing because you seem like an entrepreneurial mindset, but you chose to go down like a steady route of leading the design at a big company, which I think is a great thing. But you're also still creating your own projects and working on things. What is my question here? Let's figure it out. But the question is that when you're working on a project, say that somebody like you're working on a app, do you actually code your own app or do you work with a developer?
No, I don't code it. That would be really bad news. I think there's really great people that do these things, and one of the things that I've learned, like I said, is there are people that do really, really great stuff, and I'm more interested. And this is a personality thing, right? This is something you have to know about yourself. I'm more interested in getting the great product out the door than doing it myself. That's not like I don't get a lot of like real huge value myself from just like getting it out from doing all the actual stuff. Other people do, and that's like a huge important thing for them. And so if you're one of those people, like I think this talk tonight was fantastic. I'm super stoked on like actually getting into Xcode and doing some of that stuff. I love it, but like I know that like I'm going to be excited for a few weeks, and then about the time I start getting decent at it, I'm going to be like, I'm going to give up. So
you just learn enough, basically. We'll ask questions, and you learn enough, basically, to be able to speak the same language or be able to do it yourself, but a lot of the times you end up delegating to somebody else to complete the task.
Yeah, I don't know if I would use the word delegate when you're talking about like it's some developers. Like I think they're just, it's not that I'm delegating anything as much as like they're really freaking good at this, and like they can do it 5 times faster and at 5 times better quality than I can. And so there's like, for me to get in, that's a fun side project, a great way for me to learn. But if I'm talking about shipping a high quality app, I'm going to go with somebody that knows how to ship a high quality app. I'm not going to do a learning project. I kind of separate those two things as like, there's great things to get out the door, great things to learn on. But if I'm trying to ship something that I really think is going to do something special, like that's pull in people that know how to do something really specific that you're trying to do.
Okay. And we're going to talk about failure. No, just about the idea of like starting projects, not completing them, or not having things work out exactly. Is this not working? Oh, thank you. Thanks, Ben. Yeah. No, I mean, I can understand because I have a similar entrepreneurial mindset where I start a bunch of projects, I have a million ideas, I'm like, this will work, this will make you thousands of dollars or whatever. I don't ever pitch that, but it's like the idea of experimenting with different ideas and then growing your skills from that. What are different ways that people can either meet others who are like-minded or work on side projects and or hackathons or stuff like that? Do you know of any particular suggestions?
I mean, things like this. I think that like meeting, there's 2 parts. There's meeting other people at events where you can do stuff. The other one I think is actually just start moving. And if you start moving, if you start doing the thing and sprinting and running already, like other people will get caught up in your wake. And I think that's like a huge thing that a lot of people don't realize. They want to talk about it. They want to get everybody involved before they do anything. Just sit down and do it. Like most people, I would guess, in here, if there's a lot of designers, like sit down, make like 10 mock-ups, throw them in InVision, go start shopping it around, show it to your friends, tell them the story, see if the story resonates. And then start getting some traction that way. So one of the projects that I've been doing for the last kind of long time, it's definitely a side project at this point, starting to think if it's going to be something more for me. But I'm building a podcast app. So it's a social podcast app where you can save clips, share them with friends. There's kind of a lot involved in this. But I sat on the app idea for like the good part of a year. And I kind of do this a lot. I'll like have an idea for something that I want to make. I go home, throw it in Sketch or Photoshop or something, and just drop it on my computer and kind of forget about it for a while. But as I did that, like I kind of kept coming back to it, and then conversations would come up and ideas would come up, and I would talk to a friend, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. I really like that." If you will, that was my user research. And then I was like, "Okay, hey, maybe I need to actually go back to this idea." And then I kind of went back and I kind of actually built it out a little bit. Like, okay, what would this actually look like? The first screen I did was just kind of a total mess. It would never work. So you kind of started stringing that together in a way that people can actually understand. And then I started taking that prototype, just like super quick stuff in InVision, start showing it to people. And when then you kind of look at how people are responding. And some people would be like, yeah, that's kind of cool. I don't really get it. And then other people would be really excited. So then you start trying to figure that out. And so it's just forward motion. I mean, nothing happens from just sitting around and having great ideas. That doesn't mean a whole lot. And so just start moving in some direction. And then after I'd kind of done that for a while, there was people that were excited. There was developers that were excited. And we kind of started moving on it. So.
I really like that you just said, somebody quote him, nothing happens when you're just sitting around. I mean, it's so simple, but it makes sense. It's like, create stuff. Don't be afraid that it won't succeed. Just do it out of curiosity, I feel like. I had another question, but I forgot what I was going to ask. Cut this out of the film part, okay? Yeah. It was about, you had an interview with the guys from Design Details, and I remember you said something that was very profound, and it was about when you go hang out with people who are working on their side projects, you'll meet a lot of interesting friends and you'll get inspired. How have the people in the industry transformed your path and your career path?
Yeah, I mean, like being around people around here, I think people here think a specific way. And so that's like both good and bad, right? I mean, you need to be really aware that like people in San Francisco in tech do think a certain way. That is not how everyone thinks. And so I think you have to you get a little caught up and you get a little excited. But that said, like there's some value in that. And so I think the forward motion thing is something that I've kind of acquired. Right? I've been around people that you just have an idea and then or you're talking about something, and then they come back and say, hey, I did that thing a week later. And you're like, how did you find time to even do that? And that's like hugely inspiring to me of just people that are just kind of like, yeah, I'm just gonna go do that. And you're like, I literally don't know how you pulled that off, but they found a way to like kind of sit and do that. I think that's a huge one for me of just people doing things.
So being around people who are productive helps inspire you.
Or moving.
Yeah, moving and keep creating stuff. Okay, what else?
Yeah, I mean, the other one, if you're here and you've kind of chatted with a few people, you probably already know this, but like I've been pretty surprised at how if you find, especially in the design industry, it's pretty small. If you find somebody that you admire that's doing good work, just go talk to them, and they've been really helpful. And so I've done that a handful of times, and it's always been I'm moderately shy, and so I go up and talk to somebody, and I'm like, hey, they were actually super helpful, or really kind. And just kind of going out of their way to do whatever they can to help you. And so if you go in with a specific question, I think people have been really helpful. And I think that's something that I really appreciate about kind of the design ecosystem, at least here in San Francisco. So
yeah, I think also researching, like having something to say with a compliment, like, hey, I really like how you did this. Like you don't just say, this person can help me, but you actually recognize their accomplishment and understand a little bit of more who they are, do a little bit of research before you go and reach out to them. That will help you get better results and set up a meeting. There's so many, like, can I pick your brain? Can I pick your brain? Can I get coffee? There's a lot of that in San Francisco and everywhere, but that's why we have the speed mentoring. This isn't a plug, but it kind of is. So I guess it is. We have a speed mentoring night so you can meet one-on-one with a senior designer or director and kind of pick their brains and find out like what career path they went on, or how do you get a job and a better job and things along those lines. So we're kind of making it easier for you guys to find the right people, but yeah.
I want to share a fun little story that like is the thing that drove that home for me, and this gave me a huge amount of confidence. I had been designing for a few years, but was pretty self-taught, and I was kind of learning on the go and learning how to make websites and things like that. Kind of came to a point where I was like, hey, I need to grow a little bit more in another way, and I don't really know how to do that. Through a large series of different events, we were getting ready to move to a different place. And I saw this tweet by a guy named Eric Spiekerman, who's I don't know if you guys are designer, maybe some of you type folks know who Eric is. He's Eric Spiekerman, yeah. And he's like a really big name, like type and design type of personality, super awesome guy. But like comes across and does a ton of interviews and comes across as like very like hard-nosed and German, right? He's in Berlin, he's like a German, like stereotypical guy. But he posted this thing on Twitter saying, hey, we're looking for interns. And I was like, well, I don't know, do you do an internship after you've been around for like 5 years? But I was like, hey, I need to learn stuff. And it was 3 months. And I said, hey, let's go for it. Let's just kind of do it. So anyway, I went and did that. So I'm on the plane in London going to Berlin. And he walks right by me, right? So like, I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. This guy that I'm going to work with is now on my plane, and I ended up sitting like a row behind him. And so I was like, I feel like I've been creeping on this guy like for a little too long. I should probably introduce myself, but I waited till the like flight was like over, so in case it went really bad, I had an out. And I was like, yo, are you Eric? And he's like, yeah. And he just looked at me like, dude, like, why are you talking to me? And I introduced myself, and then he was just like, it flipped, and he was just like so friendly, so like warm and welcoming. And I didn't know what I was doing. I've never been to Berlin. I didn't have a place to stay. I was just gonna like show up and like go find a hotel or something, I don't know. And he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, you're not doing that. It's totally stupid. Like just you come stay at my house. And it's just like these people that like, I think there's so many people. I mean, he's a special breed. Like I think he's like really like an awesome guy. But there's like a lot of people. Like I kind of learned at that point that there's so many people that like we like kind of distance ourselves from, but like on our side, like they're actually really amazing, like friendly people that are super willing to help us. And he boarded me up for like 3 days until I found an apartment in Berlin, and like we just kind of hung out and like got coffee and stuff and watched the Olympics, and
That's awesome.
it was very weird.
So much of this is actually courage and having confidence and putting your ego aside and not being afraid to like see what happens.
Yeah.
That is my motivational speech for the night. Yeah, go. Wait, hold on. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Wait, high five. Awkward. All right. I think that we can turn this around to the audience because I know that a lot of you guys have questions for this brilliant man right here. But we do need my Superman. Where are you? Superman. Okay. Who has our first question? Yeah, you guys have a lot of questions here. There we go. Right there.
Like that's just do it. And honestly, like you're better off doing it for free than trying to charge and make a little bit of money. Like you're in two categories, right? Like you're in people that like kind of understand the value of what you're doing and they're gonna pay for it, and then that's probably a good relationship. There's other people where it's free and you're like, dude, it's free. Like back off. Like I'm busy this weekend. Like I'm not doing your thing. Like, and free actually is a huge way for you to try things, to get things under your belt, to get stuff in your portfolio. Like I'm actually a pretty big fan of doing free. Everything in the middle, like, hey, like I'm gonna try to make a little bit of money off of this, then you're like squeezing it out of them. They feel like kind of cheated. You didn't really get as much money as you needed to do the thing. Like that's not the right, like that's just not gonna work. Free, like, so anybody starting out right now, like the biggest challenge is getting projects under your belt. Like that's absolutely the biggest challenge, is like having real work that you shipped, that you like got out the door. So if there's an opportunity to get that, take it. Even if you have to pay somebody else to do it, like figure it out.
I'll add to that. I think that it's really important to work on side projects for free, because you're learning, you're growing, and you're basically you look at like LinkedIn or look online at the job boards and see what they're hiring for, and see like, okay, where in my portfolio am I missing, needs experience with A/B testing, or needs experience with data visualization, and needs to know, like those are the kind of projects that you should take on, are the ones that are going to enhance your portfolio and make it easy for you to like get that job, but also work on things that are aligned with your passions. Just because this is part of your brand. All the projects you work on are part of your brand. If you take a gig and it's like for doctors, and you're not really into like the medical industry, then it might not benefit you as much. You might want to go with something relating to music or arts, or I'm just speaking from my own perspective, because then I can attract more of arts and music projects. So all the projects that you take on define your brand.
And I think just a little bit even beyond that, like I think that like the thing about like, especially when you kind of mention nonprofits, I think there's a kind of like a fun side and a responsibility side that we have. Like we get to do stuff that's really impactful in theory, right? Like we're saying, like the work that we do, the design that we do is impactful. I think we have a huge responsibility and ability to like influence those companies, influence those nonprofits, and if people are doing awesome stuff, it's our like. I think that's the type of thing that for me, like once you get into everything is literally about like all decisions are made by like how much money it makes. It's very hard to at that point say I want to try to help the nonprofit. It takes a very intentional effort. So if some of those are sitting in front of you and you can use what you have to help causes that you're into, I think that's a huge, when I was talking about the bubble earlier, like that's a huge downfall of the design bubble here. They're very, very bad. The tech companies in general are horrible. at actually trying to solve problems that don't benefit themselves. So like if you have an opportunity to do that, like I would say run for it. Yeah, sorry, the other part about like open source stuff is like you want to be as close as you can towards shipping, and having a developer that's already going to work on stuff like is one step closer towards actually doing something that's going to ship. And you like might have like that's how you meet more people that are doing like that's your partners. Those are like that's like making those like partnerships and friendships might not lead to a friendship from GitHub, but it may, and it has. So,
but also like Indie Webcamp. That's a crew of open source developers. They need more designers as well, and they're dedicated into owning your own personal data. They meet up every Wednesday or every other Wednesday at Mozilla downtown on Harrison Street, and that's a really good place to meet up with a bunch of different developers who are working on open source type of Indie Webcamp. INDIE.
You're all about the plugs. This is good.
But,
this is good.
Yeah, all these plugs. Well, I'm part of the community. It's very empowering. It's like owning your data, and everybody there is like everybody there is really passionate. When you hang out with a lot of passionate people, it's like that's where ideas come from. That gives you the motivation to keep going and keep like not give up. Next, now you get. What's your name? Saya. Go ahead.
Like anytime you're going to do something like that, you want to understand where the company's at, where the people are at. You're going to probably have a bit of a hard time convincing a lot of like small development companies that they should do that. You may be able to do it, and I don't really know what the magic sauce would be there. I think there's probably a lot of apps in the like single developer realm where it was just a developer that had an idea and kind of put it out, never really thought about design. You could ping them and just like try to find their information and just say, hey, I love your app and I would love to help you make it better. I think that would be mixed results. I think if you really wanted to do that, like go find exactly what you think they could do better and then like kind of lay that out for them and say, hey, there's like 3 screens that I think like this flow could be better, and I'd love to kind of, you need to know like kind of how much commitment you want to give them too, right? So like you say, hey, I could reskin your app, and that's you're like it's going to take me a weekend or whatever. And that's a good experience. Or you could say, I think that the important thing to know there is like what are you asking of them too. So a lot of these, like if it's a small single development shop, they might have done it as a side project, and you asking them to go redo all this stuff or add a new feature may be a huge development cost for them. So you kind of need to understand where they're at, where they're coming from. But I think. I don't know if I have any real specific advice.
To add to that, think about like what is your goal? Do you want to work for that company? Are you interested in, or do you want to like have a portfolio piece, or do you like think of your end goal? Because do you remember Dustin Curtis he redesigned the American Airlines website, and I ended up like restructuring it, and he got a lot of notoriety for that, but without their permission. It's like an unasked redesign. But I don't know. I mean, I think that Twitter it would be interesting for us to take a stab at redesigning Twitter without them asking us, just to give them ideas and solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say like one like really important thing about unsolicited redesign. So like, I mean, I think if you're going to them and saying, hey, you might need help, we'll talk about it. I think one of the things that kind of like irritates me is seeing people that just like, hey, I have an idea, your thing should be like this. Without trying, like the biggest thing about doing great design is asking questions and understanding what they actually need and what they were trying to accomplish. If we just kind of come in and say, hey, it should be like this, it should be better, it should be different, without understanding like the complexities of what they're trying to do, or maybe they're like, it's great, you think I should do this, I wasn't trying to do that, like we were doing this and we're doing it really successfully. So I think you need to understand that if you're going to do something like that. So maybe it's self-evident through what they're doing, but I would say that like, hey, like how do you kind of tease that out from them? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, and how can design help accomplish that goal? And that's a kind of a key thing for every single designer at every organization, like from 1 person to like 5,000. Like you need to understand like what the business is trying to accomplish and how design can help them accomplish that thing. So kind of approach it from that angle. I have found that I don't want to be in the business of convincing people of the value of design. It's like maybe other people really want to do that. It is grueling, long, hard work, and it's not something that happens in a paragraph. It's showing the same person 15 times that it worked over the course of 6 months, 15 different times. I mean, it takes a long time, even for people that really get it. Like they might get it from a conceptual level, but then you have to like show them, okay, here's now what the steps look like. And then you got to walk them through it again and say like, now understand those steps a little bit better, and you're like kind of unpacking every time. So convincing people that design is important for their thing is a really challenging thing to do. Not that it can't be done, not that it shouldn't be done, but it is like, it's not gonna happen in a paragraph. That might happen better with photos. It might happen better with, hey, I did this thing and I ran it by 5 people and they all loved it and they said they are having problems with your previous thing and I showed them this, and like really kind of showing them the ability to do it. But like it's gonna have to be like a very intentional like expression of kind of what design can do for them. Like I said, that's a bit of a challenge. Great for other people. I don't have the time to teach
really
people how important design is.
We have time for one more question. Anybody? Oh, right.
Everybody's got a different design process. I would say over the last few years, I've had a bunch of different design processes. My favorite thing these days is to distill it down into something nobody can argue with, and so I kind of break it into 4 steps. The first is, I can't remember these. The first is discover. The second is explore. The third is produce. And the fourth is iterate. I stole that from some other people. Discover, explore, produce, and iterate. Thanks.
Discover, explore, produce, iterate. Everybody, discover, explore, produce, iterate. Okay.
Good job, guys. What testing? So like testing's a part of all this, right? So this is I've been kind of mulling over, kind of doing a couple blog posts, and I was like, crap, this is more like a book. So I'll do the quick of it. The discovery process is really around understanding like what we're building, and you kind of go through a few things, and there's a ton of inputs that go into it. But really, so when you work with a great product manager, they'll understand a ton of things, and they'll help you understand a lot of things. I think they have huge value early on. So there's a lot of input. So there's user data, there's user research, there's reviews on your app in the App Store if it's already out. You'll have PR in response to PR, and you'll have, so there's just tons and tons and tons and tons of different data. You'll have analytics, you'll have stuff coming from every single thing that you've ever done, right? So any mature company has a ton of different stuff, a ton of different inputs. So the real like talent is coming and looking at like 5,000 different inputs and saying these 3 things all connect, and I can do something with them. And that's what I call the discovery process, right? So it takes a lot of research, it takes a lot of understanding. And so then you'll kind of like, I'll like want to flesh that out a little bit, and then you ask yourself a question. If we built this, is it a real problem, and are we solving that problem? And that's all you're really trying to do at that point. Like, is this a real problem, and are we solving that problem? And that's that entire first thing. Discover like what are we actually even building, and it doesn't need any fidelity. It doesn't have to have a single screen drawn. It doesn't have to have a wireframe. It may need that in order to discover what it is, but like it's not required. At that point, then you're like, okay, cool. Now, like, let's iterate on this. Let's figure out what is the best way. So how is the second. For iterate, you're really trying to figure out how are we going to do this. And so then there's kind of 2 parts to that. You're going to want to go wide. And so you want to explore, like, how many different ways can I do that? Do I do it in an app? Do I do it in text message? Do I not need any technology at all? Or, you can kind of start wherever you want, depending on what your idea is. So you're going to go wide, and then you're going to like lose all self pride, and then just like cut it all out, and you're going to find one of those ideas, hopefully, that you think is actually going back to that core idea that you had at the end of the discovery phase, like which one of these is actually realizing that idea the best. So like we discussed like what we wanted to build, and if we solve this problem, then we would be doing something that was worth solving, right? So like, is this thing that we came up with, is it actually doing that, right? So that's kind of the whole iterate phase. Then you probably have like maybe let's call it a happy path of like, okay, if it worked this way, it would kind of go through a great process, but people would like it and people would be happy. Now there's like 75 other different ways that we can do it, and I kind of start throwing that into what I call the production phase. So production is where you explore all the different possibilities, like how is this going to work? What about this? What about that? Like, oh, we never thought about what happens when they lose their Wi-Fi connection midway through the process. Things like that, and you'll have to like cover all of that. So there's a huge body of work that happens at that point. And you start producing that, and then you'll actually start getting into actual like production of assets and working with developers and that type of thing. And then there's an iterate piece, and I think like this one is still something I'm hashing out. It depends a little bit on which process, like where you're at. So you can do it. I mean, in like at Credit Karma now, we have a fairly large organization. That means we have a lot of built-in beta testers. And so we will do things we call like fish foods or dog food. It's like kind of based on the idea, if you eat your own dog food before you kind of give it to someone else or to your dog. And so we do that a lot. And so then we build that, and that's kind of one part of the iterate phase where we are actually testing our own thing. And then we still have time before it goes public where we can wrap in a lot of those learnings, and we're actively improving the product. Then there's a second part of the iterate phase as like post-launch, which is looking at how it was received, all the different feedback, and then wrapping that. You probably don't have time at that point to wrap it back in. Maybe there's a dot release, or maybe that's going back into like a whole new set of things. That's kind of my real brief design process. The thing I like about that is it's 4 steps. You can like extend that. Like that would be how I would approach like a 3-year-long new thing, but it's also how I approach when somebody says, hey, I want to do this thing and I need it by the end of the day. Like I do the exact same process. So some parts get really shortened and compressed, and other parts you kind of, after you've done it a handful of times, you got to know like which pieces kind of have to be expanded and can be contracted and still be successful, which inputs are important. The fun thing about that process, and this, I won't get too far into this now, but the fun part about that is you can map an entire like organization to that, right? So you can see where are the roles of different people. What tools do I use at different parts? Like when people talk about like, hey, like what tools do you use for prototyping? Like, well, it depends. Where are you in the process? What question are you trying to solve? Like, what is the role of a PM? Well, where are you in the process? What is the role of business and sales? Like, well, where are you in the process? And so you can, like, if you kind of are aware where you are in the process, it simplifies every conversation you're going to have around and throughout your product organization. And you can kind of say, hey, here's where we are. So like when you're looking at this and asking me when we're going to ship, I don't know, because like this is literally the first thing I did. And so you're thinking I'm at the end of the production phase, but I'm actually just finishing up the discovery phase, and that kind of helps set expectations and things like that. So
That was awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Josh, you are Josh. Josh. Thank you. That was really great. If you guys are looking for side projects for a cause, Cascade is actually looking for, I guess we can call them interns, but we consider all of you guys, you know, just designers. So I don't know about the word intern. Explorers. We need some help with our website, and we're looking for some people to volunteer to help us design. We're adding video to the site and adding some new features. If you're interested, email myself or Ben. My email is Andi, A-N-D-I, @cascadesf.com. Ben's email is Ben, B-E-N, @cascadesf.com. And we thank you all for coming out tonight. This was excellent. And thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Can I do a shameless plug? Credit Karma is hiring designers as well. So.
Oh wait, Credit Karma's. So what kind of designers are you hiring?
All.
What? Give us a description of the one that you need the most.
I need senior product designers. I need user researchers. I need user experience designers, illustrators, design producers.
Send me a. I'll help you find some people. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Very cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm gonna shake your hands.
Thank you.
Yeah.